It's a new week, homecoming's over, I'm feeling better, so let's do some history. Bonjour tout le monde, and welcome to week 6 of Turn Back the Clock with Stock. First, a big thank you to Mr. Holt for being here last week. It was really good to have him. I can't wait to be on his show. Now, on to the history. September 27th, 1936, France abandons the gold standard. Now, this came about after some economical and financial things as a result of World War I. I've looked into it. Again, it's one of those very complicated things. I'm not an economist, so if you're interested, you can go look it up yourself. On September 28th, 1958, the new constitution for the Fifth Republic is adopted. Now, the Fifth Republic replaced the Fourth Republic, which was set in place after World War II, and it started to deteriorate when a lot of France's colonies started to revolt and gain their independence. On September 29th, 1902, Émile Zola dies from suffocation from a clogged chimney. Now, Zola was a very famous and very influential French author in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He had written a book called Germinal, and the purpose of this book was to raise awareness for the plight of French coal workers up in the north of France. And because of that, it brought about a lot of social and political changes in regards to how these coal workers and their families were treated. In 1901, also on September 29th, we had 200,000 farmers who marched on Paris to protest France's agricultural policies. September 30th, 1791, the Assemblée Nationale is dissolved as part of the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror and all that stuff that went on during that time period. It's complicated as well, but interesting. You can look that up too. Also on September 30th, in 1981, France abolishes the death penalty after the election of François Mitterrand. Mitterrand was a very important French president throughout the 80s and early 90s. Now, the last person to be executed, he was executed by guillotine. That means his head was chopped off. His name was Amida Danjoubi, and he was a Tunisian immigrant who had tortured and killed a 21-year-old woman named Elisabeth Bousquet in Marseille. On October 1st, this one I know fairly well because I was in France when this happened. It happened in 1991, and the single-tone French 10-franc French coin, here it is. I hope you can see that. Obverse and reverse. This is replaced by the dual-tone. Gold and silver. There's the 10-franc. And this image. This image appears on, or appeared on, a lot of French coins. You've got the RF there for République Française. Boom. So this one became legal tender, and this one was no longer legal tender. And if you were lucky, you got as change something like this, and ba-bam, look at that. I always thought that was cool. October 2nd, 1461. François Villon is released from prison on the accession of Louis XI. Now, this was a common practice. Whenever a new king was put in power and then he would go visiting cities, the prisoners of that city would be released. I don't know why. Sounds crazy to me. Now, Villon is one of the greatest French poets of the Middle Ages, arguably one of the best. He was also in and out of prison for robbery, theft, murder, the usual stuff. Now, his greatest work is called Le Grand Testament, and it's thought to be fairly autobiographical. He's credited with reinventing a poetic style in the Middle Ages, changing things. A lot of poetry, a lot of stories at that time looked at the hero and the hero's quest. Villon turned that around, and he looked at kind of the scoundrel's quest, because that's the kind of person he was. He's credited with one of the most famous lines in literature. It's Mais où sont les neiges d'antan? And we translate that as, where are the snows of yesteryear? Keep your ears open for that. Sometime in your life, I bet you'll come across it. One last thing this week, October 3rd, 1980. We had the birth of my good friend Phil Cunningham. So, happy birthday, buddy. That's it for this week. Comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you next week. A bientôt!
Yeah!